Hello, everyone.
We are live at HMKW, a media university in Berlin. Welcome to our very first live stream produced by the Digital Journalism Master Students. This is Mercy Hapsiba.
And I'm Stefania Vazano.
Today is the beginning of the Iowa caucus, the first contest of the primaries deciding the final candidates for the US presidential elections. We are discussing everything US in relation to the upcoming election, and the main question remains, who is winning? Is it red or blue? Is it the Republicans or the Democrats? Well, we are here to tell you that this battle goes beyond colors. We are mapping out the 2024 US elections and the key political and social issues around the winning vote. And here's what you can expect today. Through a series of videos and podcasts, we are presenting to you diverse opinions and perspectives from star US journalists to political experts to Americans living abroad.
Today, we have a special guest, Professor Dr. Markus Ziener. Markus is not only a renowned journalist, but also a professor here at HMKW. His experiences range from being a correspondent in Washington, D.C. for 6 years and Moscow for 5. Now, Markus continues to share his knowledge to the future generations of reporters and journalists. Markus, thank you for being here today. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very well. Thank you for inviting me.
Amazing. That's great to hear. Now, in your perspective, what is the major significance of the Iowa caucus? What is at stake tonight?
Well, in Iowa itself, actually it's not so much at stake. It's a caucus. Iowa is a rather small state in the Midwest. However, it's the kickoff of a string of primaries and elections we're going to see until summer this year. And at the end, it's going to decide who's going to be on the ticket on the Republican Party and also the Democratic Party. And this could decide over who's going to be the president of the United States, the sole superpower we're having. Now you have to see, this is Iowa. Again, this is a caucus. It's a very kind of awkward and very ancient way of doing voting. However, next stop is New Hampshire already on the 23rd of January. And also we have Super Tuesday coming up. Super Tuesday is a day when we have elections in 15 states. And so we already probably have a little bit of an idea who's going to be on the ticket. And I also want to remember in 2008, we had an election cycle where Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were running against each other on the Democratic ticket. It took until summer until they figured out actually who's going to be on the ticket. So there's a lot of things coming up and we don't know at this point.
So what you're saying is that anything can happen.
Well, almost. I know that we all know that Donald Trump is far in the lead when it comes to the Republican Party. However, an upset, a kind of surprise win in one of the early elections can change the race dramatically. We've seen that in the past when we had newcomers or very unknown candidates like Mike Huckabee on the Republican side, and he was able to clinch a win in the beginning, which generated money. So donors were giving him money so he could actually continue with his race. So this was something nobody really had on the card, and then it happened. So we don't know.
Very interesting. So let's take a look at tonight's race to the White House.
Talking about the US elections, first let us dive into the candidates. In the United States, the person who is representing the party is much more than any party program. So here's a video put together by our student journalist, Natalia Zapata. Let's take a look at the candidates. So who are they?
Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage?
We've become a party of losers.
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT.
You're just the easy answer.
Okay, what they're trying to say with this is that in your boots, you have heels. No.
That's what they're trying to say.
Those are just standard off-the-rack Lucchese.
How tall are you? How tall are you, Governor? How tall?
5'11".
5'11". Okay. Why don't you wear tennis shoes and dress shoes?
I do wear tennis shoes when I work out. Yeah, 100%.
You do.
Yep.
Okay.
Does anybody want to draft on the house?
Opportunities lie with farmers. They always have, and with me, they always will. I don't care what anybody says. I am a hardcore conservative. I always have been.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States. From now until Election Day in 2024, I will fight like no one has ever fought before. And you know why I wanted to be a dictator? Because I want a wall, right? I want a wall, and I want to drill, drill, drill.
Welcome to the Oval Office. Come on in.
Let's finish this job. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
That sure was entertaining, but we have to remember that Trump is still far ahead in the polls. Let's take a look at the ones of the national polls. Now, if you can see here in the graph, this is as of July 16th, 2023. We could see that Trump is far ahead with a whopping 51.1% ahead. And if you can see, DeSantis and Haley are still not quite reaching him. And that's a cause for concern. If we look at the Iowa polls, you could still see that he is winning at 51.3%. But this is also as of January 12th, 2024, so just a few days ago. And again, Haley and DeSantis and all the other candidates are nowhere near Donald Trump in the polls. So, Marcus, is there anyone in sight able to stop him?
Well, we don't know yet, but there is quite some movement to be seen actually in the past couple of weeks. Nikki Haley, she has made some headway. And if we look, of course, at the polls in other states, she's not doing that badly. And if we check out the polls in New Hampshire, which is the next stop, so we will see that things are changing.
Yeah, let's take a look at the polls in New Hampshire. Let's see the data there.
Yeah, Nikki Haley is closing the gap. And I think her biggest argument is that she can claim for herself that if there is a Biden-Haley matchup, if they are running against each other, Nikki Haley would win easily and comfortably against Joe Biden. So she can make that argument and probably can convince and can sway voters to vote for her, because if you look at a Biden-Trump matchup, things are neck on neck, basically.
So what you're saying is Haley having an edge over Biden. Does this have anything to do with her age?
Definitely. If you look at what kind of presidents the Americans have loved to elect in the past, in the last century, or even in the recent past, when you look at Barack Obama, who was a young senator coming from Illinois and with a lot of charisma. If you look at Bill Clinton, same thing. And also if you go back to John F. Kennedy, I mean, they were all young politicians. Americans love young rising stars. On the other hand, somebody like Ronald Reagan also was elected, who was already rather old when he was running for president. So in a sense, age matters, but this case is a little different this year. We have two candidates, two presumptuous candidates, Trump being 77, Joe Biden being 81, and then we have Nikki Haley, and she's 51 years old. So she really can make a difference, and people probably are a little sick of those old white men actually running the country or want to run the country.
Absolutely. And we see this topic coming up in our conversation with Anne Wertheimer, an American living in Germany for the past 40 years, who has a lot to say about the criticism against Biden. Let's watch our conversation with our student reporters, Dominika Sosa and Lisa Krause.
I didn't vote for Biden in the primary. I voted for Elizabeth Warren, but I'm very pleased with the things he's managed to do, even with not much of a majority in the Senate and none in the House. So, and Trump is crazier than I thought. But I mean, I can't excuse him just because he's that crazy. He is really, I used to, for a couple of years, I would say proto-fascist. I can leave off the prefix now because he says what he wants to do.
So, whenever I think of Joe Biden, I think of a rapidly aging old man who spent most of his career being pretty terrible, but managed to luck his way into an image rehabilitation by spending 8 years as a quirky sidekick to one of America's most charismatic presidents. And he's the man who is unfortunately running for president again, which he's probably going to lose because I think Joe Biden is the only person who thinks people like Joe Biden. He only won the last election because of who the other guy was. No one's ever gotten excited about Joe Biden. I think on his own wedding day at the altar, he said, "I do," and his wife said, "Yeah, I guess." And whenever I think of Donald Trump, I age greatly. He is a racist Cheeto goblin, a tiny-handed fascist, an admitted sex criminal, and even if he goes to jail for one of the many crimes he's on trial for right now, there's still an embarrassingly large chance that he will become the next president.
I don't know why so many people are disappointed in Biden's achievements. I can only say because they don't know about them. I am always amazed how terribly people are concerned about Biden's age.
Yeah. Especially since they are not actually that far apart,
Right,
Biden and Trump.
Right. And I think people react to Trump. You say, which one of the two will do more for women? Well, people will, if they're Trumpists, they will say Trump. Who will do more to reduce inflation? They will say Trump.
Because their mindset is set on that.
That's their mindset, yeah.
And that looks like a vote for Biden. Markus, do you agree with Anne? Do you think people are rather voting along the party lines than for a specific candidate?
Actually, to the opposite. I think that in the United States, the candidates matter. It's not the program, it's not really the party line, it's the charisma and the character of a candidate. I mean, I mentioned already a couple of presidents in the past who had a lot of charisma, who were radiating this kind of youthness or this kind of magic, actually, that's also surrounded with this position as a president. And Barack Obama is just the latest in that row, in that string. So I think a good candidate for the presidency can sway voters even from the opposite camp. And I think this is what American elections are all about when it comes to the president.
Interesting point. Exploring the election campaigns has given us a front row seat to the dynamic and often divisive nature of American politics. Now we delve into a topic that has become increasingly prominent over the recent years: the division in the United States.
The divisions were clear to see on January 6, 2021, when an out-of-control mob was attacking Capitol Hill, chasing elected members.
we have witnessed a huge division between the Republicans and Democrats, which has resulted in a polarized society. The fight goes over issues like abortion, gun control, immigration, the black vote, and a growing rift between the urban and the rural population.
We continue to see this, especially in campaign videos using the people's polarization to gain votes. The Trump campaign has continuously been hammering this issue, especially in the video that we will see just now.
It's an invasion of America. Streets flooded with poison, killing millions. Enemies and tyrants on opposite sides of the globe laugh at us. Wars threaten us. The threat of nuclear annihilation, once forgotten, is now real again. America's weakness has become their strength. The global elitists who send your kids to war, who tell you a woman is a man and a man is a woman, who teach your children their country, their faith, their beliefs are a lie. They have corrupted every facet of American government, weaponized it against you. While they watch our cities burn and violent crime skyrocket, you and your families pay the price. Out of control inflation, an economy wrecked, a nation in decline. This is Joe Biden's America. Failing, weak. But one man, one movement can change all that for us. Put America, the middle class, first. And put the globalists, the elitists, and the corrupt in their place. Bring back pride and the American dream. To let the world know, don't mess with us. One man focused on the true owners of this great land. One movement focused on the true priorities. Make America great for us again.
That was very intense. Our student reporters, Nana Johansson, Rostislav Tulipov, and myself looked more into the reasoning behind this division. We spoke to star journalists Peter Baker of the New York Times and Susan Glasser of the New Yorker, who over the past years have covered up to 5 presidencies from Bill Clinton to Joe Biden. Here they are.
In the southwest of Berlin lays the American Academy, a home of cultural exchange between Germany and America. To understand how the political situation looks inside the US right now, our reporters have met here with journalists Peter Baker and Susan Glasser, visiting Berlin from Washington.
Well, it's a lot of factors, I think, playing into it. It's the fragmentation of the traditional media. It's the advent of social media. It's the ability to find people who agree with you or sources of information that reinforce your preconceived notion, and therefore you don't need to actually engage or even encounter contrary facts or contrary arguments these days. Today, you don't need to worry about facts that are inconvenient to you because you can go to your corner of the internet or your favorite television station or news outlet and only engage with the people who agree with you already. And so I think that has been pulling us further and further apart. There are also issues of race and economics and religion, which are tugging away. The immigration has inflamed a lot of people. There's a lot of different factors. And I think there's a geographic sorting going on where people are more and more physically only living with people who agree with them. The states are more or less either red or blue. Your communities are red or blue. Your neighbors agree with you on most things and you don't engage with people who don't. And I think that that's all begun, contributed to this sense of polarization that Donald Trump arrived in. Yeah, economics is a part of it. It's sometimes we can overstate it, but it is no question that there are a lot of Americans who feel that they have been somehow left behind. There's a large inequality. The gap is larger than I think it's been in a century. The sense that today corporate executives can make 300 times what the average employee of their company might make, far, far greater than they ever used to. The sense is that other people are getting ahead while you're being left behind. And that sort of discontent was there for a person like Trump to come along and tap into. Somehow he has positioned himself as the champion of those who've been left behind by the wealthy class. That doesn't mean that the wealthy class doesn't support him. They do, actually. They approve of some of his policies and so forth, taxes and regulation. But that sense of division in the country based on resentment and grievance was, an avenue for him to take advantage of.
Trump has really changed the party. And so, for example, it used to be the party of free trade and big business. And now that's been shifting. Donald Trump has spent a whole career essentially complaining about free trade and looking to have more protectionist policies in place, for example. One of the biggest divisions inside the Republican Party is between those who actually support Donald Trump and his lies about the 2020 U.S. election versus those who don't. And it's a vast majority of the Republican Party, I should point out, that has gone along with Donald Trump, even with his most extreme falsehoods and lies. So those early contests in 2024, the Iowa caucus, the New Hampshire primary, they were really the only chance left to show that there is a meaningful opposition to Trump inside the Republican Party. So, we'll see if anyone else can actually win the race, in effect, for second place. So sometimes, if you're the second place finisher, but you finish very strongly in a place like Iowa or New Hampshire, that can be enough to boost your campaign. And right now, the person who looks like they're trying and might have a chance to do that would be Nikki Haley, who's the former governor of South Carolina. I would look to see if Nikki Haley or someone else can present a strong second place finish.
That was Peter Baker and Susan Glasser on the political division in the US. And the tough question we are all trying to answer tonight is, what gives us hope for the future of American democracy? Markus, what do you think?
Well, if we take the first term of the Trump presidency as a benchmark, there's not so much reason actually to be very hopeful. I have to admit, if you think back, he was lashing out and attacking the judiciary. He was attacking the independent media. So he was going after the institutions of the United States. And the question is the US able to sustain another blow like this if Trump gets elected? Now, on the other hand, you have to see that the US is a democracy which is already there for almost 250 years. It was established in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence, and it went through many occasions where there was a deep division. Think of the Civil War about slavery. Think about the equal rights movement in the 1960s, and the blacks and the whites. Think about the Vietnam War. So there was a lot of things going on, and the American democracy survived. So there's hope. Besides, we have a lot of things that are at our concern.
And maybe they can overcome it again.
Let's dive into the key issues of a major influence on this U.S. election. Mercy had a talk with Avalon Purnell, a young journalist from Alabama who spoke on the black vote within the U.S. Because one of the dividing lines that can tell this whole election runs through black and white.
So, how important is it to talk about the black vote for you?
To speak fairly candidly about it, my grandmother was in Alabama. She's also the daughter of a former slave. So speaking up, she saw everything from start to finish in terms of the 1960s. And then in terms of when she was able to actually cast her votes, up until the point that she died, she voted in every single election. Even though that generation is beginning to die out, we still have to kind of remember those stories and recognize that voting rights, especially with what we're seeing happening to the Voting Rights Amendment right now, it's not a guarantee, and that if you don't continue pushing for it, it's going to end up getting drawn back again.
Could you just answer your own question? What does a vote actually mean?
Ooh, in my opinion, a vote is your voice. So across the board, whether it is a local election, which I personally believe are the most important elections that you can have, or a national election determining who your president is going to be, every vote matters. We actually just saw in Louisiana where a sheriff was elected based on one vote. They did the recount and he did still win with just one vote.
Lately, there has been discussions about the risk of suppressing black voters. What is your view behind this?
So I definitely think that it's a major issue. We also see it in Mississippi, where you have certain voting booths are being closed without telling the residents where they're supposed to go, and this is happening on your voting days. So I think that it's a very large problem, and it's going to potentially be the difference in terms of who will win. And it again goes back to that question of the energy of a base. If there isn't anything that's energizing them, when you have issues like that of voting accessibility, that could be the difference in someone deciding to stay home or not. And I think that's a very, very important issue, especially coming up on 2024, depending on who the Republican candidate is.
Wow, those were strong insights from Avalon Purnell on the black vote. And one thing is clear, without the black vote, Democrats won't win. If you're still with us, please make sure to keep watching us till the very end for a very special and funny episode of Nuclear Dynasties, as well as a Q&A. And if you have any questions, please make sure to leave them in the comments below and stay tuned.
Now, let's move across the pond, or rather, ocean. How may Trump's election affect transatlantic relations? This question was explored by our student journalists Katarzyna Włodarczyk, Jenny Selby, and Adele Gigli.
They spoke to Dr. Thomas Greven, who is a social scientist and a political consultant, and he has been following the US political landscape for over 25 years. Let's see what he had to say.
We are looking at a prospect of a second Trump presidency, which is going to be very ugly in the United States mostly, but it's also going to be very bad for transatlantic relations. Our challenge is, and that's what I see as my personal challenge also, is to uphold these friendships, to not mistake what Washington, D.C., what the federal government does for the whole. What governments say and do may not at all times reflect what people want and wish for. Oh, very. We have a situation right now where the support of the United States for the Ukrainian effort to defend themselves against Russian aggression is put in question. So that's a real problem, which puts the burden of this support on Europe. And I don't know that Europe is really ready for it. And of course, with a looming second Trump presidency, this kind of situation could get worse. When you see how Germany is struggling to reform its armed forces, we have a long way to go. I think the Russian aggression against Ukraine was a wake-up call, and so there is a lot more urgency right now. But we're not there yet. Not by any stretch of the imagination. German armed forces or European armed forces and German foreign policy, European foreign policy, are they ready to go this alone without the United States? So to go back to a previous question, the transatlantic relationship really still is the foundation of Europe's role in the world.
So, Dr. Thomas Greven has shared some deep concerns over Trump's reemergence to power, the US ties with Europe, and a possible cutting of aid to Ukraine. Markus, what will happen to Ukraine is of important concern. If Trump is elected, do you think the aid would end?
Well, that's a crucial question. It's probably the question, at least from a European perspective. I mean, just imagine if the US stops sending aid to Ukraine. The US is by far the biggest giver of aid to Ukraine, militarily, but also in other terms. Germany is second, but there is a huge gap between the US and all the others. So if the US is going to stop giving aid to Ukraine, this would leave probably Ukraine with a huge void when it comes to the military side. We're already seeing this. In the Congress, there is a blockade by the Republicans to free more money for Ukraine. This is also already now happening. Also, we have a different situation. Biden's still in power. So I think to understand what Trump really believes, I think it's also important to see what he has said in the past about Ukraine. He firmly believes that the war in Ukraine is a European problem. It's not an American problem. So he also believes that either Europe is stepping up its support for Ukraine, or Ukraine might lose this war. And then you can imagine what this actually means. If Ukraine is losing the war, the Russians would take over Ukraine as a whole, or at least major parts of it. And we see Russian troops face to face with NATO troops on the borders to Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and so on. So this could escalate the whole security situation quite substantially. So this is unfortunately the dire situation where we could find ourselves in if Trump wins the election.
Thank you for your insights. Following this expert analysis, we would now like to turn to a personal perspective of Michael Grubb, a former HMKW student and an American expat who has been living in Germany for the past 5 years.
Would you say that you're worried about Trump getting into power again?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think if you take the rhetoric of Donald Trump and the political movement around him at face value, literally just listen to what's being said, what the intentions are. And I think we should be quite worried about this.
So if we're to take the current rhetoric at face value, that means there's a threat to democracy, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, in my view, I think we should be very concerned about that. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest concerns here in Germany is that the US under Trump will withdraw defense spending for NATO and Ukraine will suffer. How are people talking about that at home?
It's interesting, this was an issue that Donald Trump harked on in his first administration, right? He came here and sort of reprimanding the Europeans for not spending enough of their budget on defense. And it's something that it's another reason why I think we ought to be concerned, because this sort of transatlantic security cooperation is, we see it now in the context of Ukraine, is that it is a real source of stability in the Western world. I would say we shouldn't take that type of thing so seriously. I think in the Republican Party, this controversy around funding for this is less framed as a problem with NATO itself, and more of disagreements about the specific funding that the U.S. is giving to actors in specific conflicts, and particularly Ukraine. And it's a particularly in my mind, it's a particularly concerning development that there's a wing of the Republican Party now in the United States that seems to be, unsympathetic to the needs of the Ukrainians and our role, the United States' role in that, and somewhat sympathetic to Putin and to the Russian regime. I can't imagine that would become less if we have a Donald Trump presidency.
So, from what we've heard, it looks like Thomas and Michael are both deeply concerned for Trump winning this election. Now, it's quite important to hear from the younger generations. So up next, we're listening to Christian Kohi, an American political science student at Free University Berlin, having a conversation about living abroad and the US's international influence, interviewed by our very own Mahin Ghani.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast where we will be talking about the United States and their role in the world. I'm your host, Mahin Ghani, and today we're joined by Christian Kohi. In the context of the elections coming up, can you tell me where you see the U.S.'s position evolving as an international player?
I think in regards of U.S.-Europe relations, a Democratic win will just be a continuance of the status quo. And with a huge focus on what's happening with Russia, I think the Republicans have a much bigger focus on China.
Interesting.
And when you watch the Republican debates, some of them don't care at all about what's happening in Russia and in Ukraine. And they think that we should just allow Russia to do whatever they want, take whatever they want. Those that do support Ukraine and have been to Ukraine and want to support them as much as we can, even they are only doing that with the view of China in the background, because they, in the end, what they really are focused on is breaking the Russia-China alliance. And I think in general, it would hurt the United States' appearance on the international stage if Trump or another Republican does come into power.
Talk to me about Joe Biden. Like, we've now seen him through his first term as a president. We've seen his foreign policy. He's promised a lot in the upcoming years if he were to get reelected. Tell me what that looks like, or what you would see that looking like if he were to get reelected.
So it kind of seemed like a mixed bag at the very beginning of his term. We saw that he wanted to pull out of Afghanistan, which a lot of people on the left and the right saw as a good move. One of these endless wars finally coming to an end. It was interesting to see, however, the flip-flopping of so many people after it was actually done, and them saying that we didn't do it the right way. So it's kind of interesting to see how these dreams of the American empire are so ingrained in people that even when they finally see some kind of an ending to that, they still can't really cope with it. Just in this month and a half that we've had since Gaza's incursion into Israel, and Joe Biden's complete unconditional support for everything that Israel has done since, he's lost a huge chunk of young supporters. He's lost almost all Arab American support. And then, not to forget that in general, while it is different with Israel, because there are so many conservative evangelicals in the United States that will unconditionally support Israel no matter what, because they think that if Israel gets to the entire promised land, that's when Jesus returns. It's crazy. I think that could affect his chances, but you also have to remember that the American voter has a very short memory span.
So, Christian, thank you so much for coming in today and answering all our questions. This was a really interesting conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that was Christian on the role of United States in the world. Markus, do you think the US is able to maintain its impact globally?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, to be honest, because there are so many factors at play. We've just heard about the divisions within the United States, and they can also impact what the US globally can bring to the table. If the country is divided, if there are inner machinations that are really disturbing the inner harmony of the country, then of course the US will not be acting as they did before. And secondly, I think next to the fact that we have Russia at war in Europe, I think the main threat is something else. It's China. And why? Because China is challenging the United States on a global stage and on various fields. It's not only militarily, it's also technologically, and it's also economically. So this is something experts call a pacing threat in comparison to the Russia, which is mainly a military threat. So I think it's still China, the US has to worry, and if the US is challenged globally in their superpower role, it's Beijing, it's China.
Of course. China has a firm seat at the table of the key players. But how do these global powers behave? Well, we imagine them having dinner together. And this is presented by Mahin Ghani, Mahmoud Elassi, and our very own Stefania Bassano. Make sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy an episode of Nuclear Dynasties.
It's just so I cannot. It's like so disrespectful.
Completely.
Just, but I understand.
I'm not surprised at all. Like,
hey guys, sorry I'm late. My meeting ran longer than expected, but you know how that is, China being the big boss.
Oh, that's fine. You just gave us more time to catch up.
Yeah, we weren't talking about you or anything.
I know they said they weren't talking about me, but they totally were. I mean, no one has more going on than me.
Anyways, America, I heard you've been thinking of expanding your nuclear family. Feeling a bit competitive, are we?
Well, Russia, some of us like to stay more relevant, unlike some nations still stuck in the Cold War era.
That's fine. I hope you're not planning any surprise parties with that arsenal of yours. I've got my eyes on you.
Surprise parties? We ought to keep an eye on China for that one.
Surprises? Me? Maybe a little. Russia, what about you? You've been breaking a lot of nuclear guidelines lately, trying to be the rebel of the family.
Call it a midlife crisis. Keeps things interesting, you know?
Interesting. Escalating to tactical nukes, moving around warheads. Sounds more like a drama-filled reality show to me than a responsible plan.
The nerve of the US acting like they own the nuclear runway. Ugh.
As if we need more drama. So, China, your move. Are you joining the party or staying on the sidelines?
Oh, I'm keeping all my options open. Gotta play the game strategically.
Ah, the strategic game reminds me of the good old days.
The good old days when you and I were the main characters and China was on the sidelines.
Oh, please. The two of you have been playing the nuclear monopoly for far too long. Now that I want a seat at the table, suddenly it's a problem.
Well, that balloon business wasn't very pleasant.
Seriously? For him to bring up the spy balloon? How petty is that? Oh, you did not.
I did.
Anyways, where's this waiter? By the time the food comes out, China will already be a superpower. That sure was funny, huh? But you can definitely feel the tension in the air, right?
Definitely. Talking about the rising tension, I believe we have some pressing questions among our audience. Over to you, Claudia.
Yes, and indeed, already questions arose, especially here from the first row. Natalia, why don't you make a start?
Thank you, Claudia. So, as I understand, Biden is running for president because he is the current president and that is the natural thing to do. But he hasn't been doing so well in the polls, as I believe his approval rate is around 40%, more or less. My question would be, is it possible for the Democrats to choose a different candidate to represent them? Thank you.
Well, theoretically it's possible, but I think we have never seen that happen actually in the past 100 years. Because a sitting president can be challenged, but that he is replaced by somebody else is very unlikely. We've seen a challenging of Jimmy Carter when he was president and he wanted to be reelected, and he was challenged by Ted Kennedy in 1980. But in the end, actually, Carter ran again. He lost against Reagan, and so it's very unlikely that this is happening. However, you have to keep in mind there's one thing that really is in favor of Biden. He is the economy is doing well in the US. And there is the saying, it's the economy stupid, basically addressing the fact that people are looking very much on, okay, how is my personal situation? Do I make money? Do I have a job? These kind of questions. As long as this is going well, I think his chances are not too bad. But again, I mean, we talked about this, that Biden is an old guy, actually, and he is not really somebody you want to see for a long time in a situation where you have a huge crisis at hand. And so people are doubting that he's the right person. And of course, there's another thing at play, which has to do with the current situation in Gaza, in the Middle East. I think he's losing a lot of support because of his support for Israel, and many of the Muslim population in the US are walking away right now. So he has a lot of challenges to face.
In fact, that was already also a comment we heard. But also, Lisa, you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I was actually wondering something related to Trump, and I feel like quite a lot of people, at least in the EU, are kind of confused about this fact that despite everything Trump has done, like, for example, his role in the insurrection or the court procedures against him currently, how come, despite all this, so many Americans are still willing to support him?
Yeah, I think many people are wondering how that is possible. But I think we're seeing this here in Europe as well. I mean, that the media environment is contributing to this. If you look at social media in particular, the way they frame things, the way they are able to put narratives out there, like portraying facts as lies. So I think it's for the ones who are really believing in Trump, they believe that everything else that is happening, that is speaking against him, is actually not true. So in a sense, I think he's capitalizing on this fact that people tend to stick to him because they believe everything else that's said against him, that's criticized, is just made up or not true.
We have a comment from Kevin Haking. Thank you for that. I'm going to read it to you. How is Nikki Haley doing in the rural states, being from South Carolina and aiming her current campaign towards rural areas? What's your assessment?
I think she's doing not badly, because she's considered to be somebody, because of her being a governor, somebody who's close to the people, somebody that she knows really what concerns are with the regular Americans. I think that's helping her a lot. She also understood that she had to make. She had to show quite some presence in Iowa, but also in New Hampshire and other states. I think she is not really portrayed as somebody who's belonging to the American elite to such a degree as probably others in the race. So, and in particular to a liberal or elite or so. So, in a sense, if she really would have a shot, I think she has some opportunities, some chances here.
Well, thank you for your answers. It's a wrap for us here from the live audience and the comments. And back to you, Stefania and Mercy.
Thank you, Claudia. And thanks for all the questions. As we are wrapping up the evening, we hope we have highlighted the importance of the Iowa caucus and the string of primaries that will follow.
And in turn, showing how the US election is important, not only to the US, but to everyone in the world. Now, we would like to thank you for tuning in to our live stream, and we also want to thank all the people that made this possible. In particular, all the students of the MA class DJ09, thank you, and the fantastic crew of the video team here at HMKW with Jost Listemann at the helm, and our audio expert Claudia Hamboch.
And once again, we'd like to thank our guest of honor today, Professor Markus Ziener. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your valuable insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
If you found this live stream interesting, please make sure to give us a thumbs up and a subscribe to the channel to see more from HMKW. Until then, this is me, Mercy Hapsiba, and my colleague, Stefania Bazzano, signing off. Thanks for watching and have a good night.
Good night and goodbye.
We had many questions on the live stream.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like unexpected, no?
Yeah, I wish we could have answered.
Why don't we ask more? I don't understand.